Hello and welcome back, this is ProTaleDev, back with another Dungeon Farm Tycoon game. So this is the second episode of making this game, this Tycoon, and we're going to be looking at placement specifically in this video. So what have I done in the meantime since the last planning video? And as you can see, I've got a bit more of a scene here, a lot more scenery, a lot more aspects to this layout. And I'm just going to show you what I've done first, and then I'll explain how I've done it. So, first of all, you're going to notice is I've obviously got this island filled out with different items, and I've got this menu on the right side. So, what this menu does is just like the name of the episode suggests. This is all about placement, so placing objects. So, for now, I've only done, I think, these 4 items. So, these are the 4 items that work. The rest are just kind of here for scenery and what I plan out, but basically what I can do is I can place these objects down onto the world. So I can place them down in different places. At the moment they do overlap with other objects because I haven't done that part yet. But you can place these down on the world. Like for example, if you've got a path here, you can place this down. But again, they do overlap with each other at the moment. So yeah, we got the trees as well, so that's a path, the house, we got some trees we can place down, and we got this store that we can place as well. You'll also notice that I can see the selection point, which is the mouse with this light yellow circle, but the blocks aren't exactly following it. It's placing it down on a specific tile map on a grid, so we're going to go over that right now, so let's check it out. So this is how I've done it. Oh, the other thing I will quickly show you as well is that you cannot place on the ocean. Like, you cannot place anything on the ocean, you can only place it on land. But you cannot place anything on the ocean. So let's look into it. What have I done? Before we get into the script, because I like to look at the scripts towards the end, let's look at our selection point. So our selection point is pretty much where we're clicking. It's just a game object that follows the mouse around the mouse's position. It just updates. And this is kind of how we're detecting where certain objects are in the world where we are able to place objects down. So as you can see, it's just got a collision on it, and it's got a special script called Detect Landscape. This script will specifically detect the collision box for the island, where I want you to be able to click things down, and if it's able to detect if your selection point is over land or not, then this bool will set to true, and then we'll use it in our placement script. So that's how we're detecting. It's really straightforward. The next thing I want to quickly show is this grid. So here we got a custom grid. And I'm not sure if I showed this last time, but so I'll quickly, very briefly go over it. But basically, this custom grid just lines up perfectly with the tile map, so that we can use this in our script for when we want to move our selection point. And I think I may have covered it in the last video, but I can't remember. It was a couple of days ago. But basically, this kind of acts as our placement object, and it's getting all of our position, which we use for our placement for objects. So basically, with our grids, we got for the moment 4 different tile maps. The first one is our land, so if we just quickly turn these off, you'll notice that this is our land. We also have here our placement. So this placement is specifically the parts that cannot be, you can't place items on. So the ocean, and then these little edges at the sides, which you shouldn't be able to place things on. And then we have here, which is our scenery, which doesn't do anything at the moment. I'm actually planning on changing this slightly. For example, things like trees and stuff, I'm actually going to make it so that they are placeable objects and that can be deleted, not on a tile map. Kind of like how we're doing with the houses and things. That way the player can really customize the scenery a lot better. And then finally we got some of these extra buildings and scenery, which at the moment I think are closely similar. So I could probably get rid of, initially this tile map I'll probably just get rid of, because I want you to be able to place paths and buildings on your own, so that's how map will probably go. or be changed for something else. But going back to what it is, just for the sake of placement, I'm just going to make it so that the grass is slightly, actually no, I'll leave that for now. So as you can see, we've got our island. Very basic, very basic stuff, but moving on, we've obviously got our canvas, which has all of the separate things. This is just buttons, so these are all just simple buttons where you'll just click on it and it'll do a function, which we have in our placement script. So select shop. So for example, let's move into our script now. So the script is on our game manager. You know me, if you've seen a video in the past, I really like to use the game manager for lots of the world related stuff, the world generation and kind of world management. So I like to have the game manager as kind of the main thing that holds a lot of these really prime scripts for different things like the gameplay and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into here, into our placement script, and this is really what I've done and to manage to get the placement working. So let's start from the top. So for the first thing you're going to notice is that I've got a reference to our detect land script, which is our detect landscape, which determines if a boolean is on and off, whether you're hovering over, if your selection point is colliding with a specific collision that's named land, then it will detect true or false, and that's the reference we're getting. We also got the same thing for the custom grid, because we want to be able to get the position of new. We want to be able to get the new position from our custom grid, which was here. Then what we also wanted to look at is we need to manage all of our sprites, so that we can change the sprite that is actually on our selection. So if I go to selection a second, you'll notice that default object is also there, and that's the yellow circle. So this will change depending on if you click on a certain button, and it will change to a different sprite. So depending on what you click on, so whether it's the shop, house, path, tree, and then default button, which is just the yellow circle. We've also got a bunch of different game objects, which is the prefabs for the different things that get spawned, the different buildings. Obviously they're going to be actual instantiated objects in the world, so you'll be able to delete them later. Obviously we got our position, we got a few other things. We're managing to track the numbers, so what is actually selected, and obviously we got the tile maps and available spots and the grid. So let's look into it a little bit more detail. So again, just setting things at the start so we know what the references is where, and let's look at our update. So initially I had this at fixed update, but it wasn't working as well as I hoped, so I just changed it back to update. And what we've got here is we've got our button press. So when we press left on the mouse click, so our primary button, what it'll do is it'll run this function. So if it's not on 0, which means that 0 means that it's not selected, so if you just check down here, it means that it's on default object, so nothing's been selected, nothing's there, then it will not do this. It will not check for a valid tile. What will happen after this is it will check for a valid tile to click on. So if our land is actually true, then we should be able to instantiate the building prefab. Obviously if it isn't and we're not on land, then this won't get called. So what's going to happen here is obviously we have our 0, which is our deselect. So the button at if I quickly go back to our canvas, over here is this button, and this is our deselect button. This should deselect the game object. Not completely finished yet, because I think it needs to change certain buttons, but basically when you click the deselect, it'll set back to 0, which will set it back to our default building prefab. But if it's a different number, and the number will be indicated based on what is selected, so if we were to select a path, it would set to 2, and when it's set to 2, it will change the basic default prefab that is getting spawned in to the path prefab. So all we're doing here is just changing a prefab, overwriting a previous one, and then just spawning that prefab whenever it's called here. So very simple, very straightforward, and obviously the position of where it instantiates is based on the new position of the which is gained from the custom grid. So here is the script for the detect landscape. So it's just using collisions. So whenever you go into an area or come out of an area, it's set true. If you go out, it's false. So if you're colliding with no place, it's set to false. And then if you stay in that area, we want it to constantly update, because there's been issues where it's overlapping a certain collision and doesn't know which one it's on. So this just helps clarify if it's true or false. So yeah, that is all I've done so far. It's very simple, very straightforward. However, it really opens up the door to being able to create this Tycoon a little bit better, and really allows us to create those classic Tycoons that we are all so fond of. So there are a few glitches, of course, like for example, if you spam enough, you can manage to put it under in certain places that shouldn't be. Though it's very, very rare, for example, just then, and it's in case you're doing it too quickly. There's also currently you can overlap, like as I mentioned before, you can overlap stuff. So we need it to be able to check for the collision, and when we're hovering over it, we need the selection point collision to check if it's currently colliding with another object, and if it is, it shouldn't be able to place an item down. We also need to be able to delete things that we're hovering over. And to do that, we can kind of have maybe we should be able to check that by maybe a mouse click button when we're hovering over, or potentially having another button here which is like a bulldozer, and then when you click, and it should check for an item underneath and delete it. So potentially that's what I'll be doing next. However, I want to quickly move away from the placement aspect, because this is the basic that I wanted, and I want to start adding in a currency of some kind, and maybe a potential little bit more functionality for these houses, like different things in terms of the gold and the currency that we wanted. So trying to set up a very basic system for that. So that's what I'll be working on and showing next time. So look forward to that. So this has been ProTaleDev, and I'll see you next time.